Hey there, I'm Amanda. Welcome back to the Happy Homestead, and today I'm going to make some yogurt and show you how I do that process. Now, I have tried to make yogurt many times over a few years and have failed miserably. The reason I failed is because I tried to do it in my Instant Pot. Now, I have a much older Instant Pot, so it's probably 7 or 8 years old. I mean, I got it when almost they first came out. So I can't tell if, when I'm doing the yogurt function, am I really getting to the right temperatures? And I think that was the problem. I was relying on a button pressing yogurt and expecting my Instant Pot to deliver this really great yogurt, and it just wasn't happening. So I've taken that out of the equation, and now I do it on the stove. It is just as easy. It's probably the same amount of time and the same amount of hands-on, right? So it is an activity that you're gonna wanna do while you're at home. And by doing it on the stove and using my thermometer gun, by the way, I use this for everything. I love this thing. This is in my Amazon shop if you wanna take a look and get one for yourself. I use it for cheese making, I use it for yogurt, I use it for soap making. It's a lifesaver. So the reason I'm doing it on the stove is because I can really get a much more accurate read on my temperature, and it just makes the process that much smoother. So I have 2 quarts of milk here. This is raw milk. There is some cream in it. I shook it up a couple of hours ago. I actually took these out of the refrigerator, actually maybe about 2.5 to 3 hours ago. Just to kind of help take the chill off of them. They're going to be warming up to 181 degrees anyway, so I thought I'd help that process along by taking them out of the refrigerator. I also have a quart here of already made yogurt that I did a few days ago, and you can kind of see there's some whey here at the top, but it is beautifully thick and delicious. And once I get my yogurt made, it lasts in the fridge for a decent amount of time. I'm talking a couple of weeks minimum, really. It just doesn't last that long with my family. But it is a great way to preserve your milk. Yogurt and fermentation is just a natural method anyway of preserving food. So I am using the Nancy's Probiotic, the low-fat yogurt, plain, no sugars, no added sugars. I'm using this as my starter culture. My goal is to keep my yogurt going and always have some, so I always have my own starter culture and I don't have to buy any more of this. Now, you can use just about any store-bought yogurt as your starter culture, but there's a couple of things you want to look for. You want to make sure that you do have those probiotic culture strains in the ingredient list. You do want to make sure you're trying to buy and use a plain yogurt and not something that's got a crazy flavor and all of these added sugars and preservatives and whatnot, right? The best you can get is the plain probiotic. So I am going to be doing this in a really big pot I have here, and I'm actually going to be using my Instant Pot rack. And so my quarts, I'm going to take the lids off in a minute, but my quarts are going to sit in the pot on the stove top like this. The water is going to heat up around it, get really hot, and then help, heat up our milk. And the goal I said is to get to 181 degrees in the milk. And you want to make sure that you're keeping your glass off of the bottom of your pot, which is why I'm using the rack. And guys, you can skip the whole in the jar step altogether and pour your milk directly in your pot and heat it up that way. I've done that too. I actually prefer to do it in the glass jars this way with the rack in the bottom of the pot because it really just creates less cleanup, because then I'm just going to add my starter culture in here, stir it, let it culture, and it's ready just to go in the fridge when it's done. So I'm not really dirtying up a pan, mind you. That's the way I like to do it. All right, so I'm going to turn my stove on to about a medium high. Get my jars in on the rack, and I'm going to pour water in the pot. Okay, so the water is at just about the halfway point of my jars. I can take my lids off. So make sure my jars are very stable and don't tip. Okay, and we're gonna let this heat up. Now again, we wanna get to 181 degrees inside the milk. The reason we're going to 181 is because milk, especially raw milk, but even regular pasteurized or low pasteurized milk still has some of those natural cultures in them that just occur naturally. And so by heating up to 181 degrees, you are killing them. And I know that sounds so just like an oxymoron when you think of, you know, raw and fermented vegetables, but we're killing all of the things that are in it, because what you want are these cultures to flourish and grow. And if you have other cultures in the milk that aren't killed off, they could be competing, and then you don't actually get the end result that you're looking for. So that is why we heat it up to 181 degrees. Then we're gonna let it cool down anywhere between usually about 112 to 118 degrees. And then we add this in. So I took this out of the fridge just about 10 minutes ago. I am gonna keep this on the counter the entire time while this is heating up and while it's cooling down. So by the time I get to 112 to 118 degrees with my milk, this will be a little bit more room temperature also. And so I'm not adding a really cold culture into a warm milk. You know, you want to kind of have parity with the temperatures a bit. You don't have to get exact, but room temp really helps kind of get that culturing process going. So I will check these periodically. It's going to take a little time to get up to 181 degrees. I think the last batch I made, it took about an hour. So I want to make sure I'm aware of that going through it in this process. You don't want to heat it so super fast that you burn or scald anything. That shouldn't happen because we don't have it on the bottom of the pan. It is on a rack, but you still want to be careful. So we're right now at actually 69 degrees, which is great. So having it outside the fridge for a couple of hours really did help. But we're going to bring this up to 181. I'll let you know how long that takes once we get there. We are at 42 minutes, and what I've been doing is just occasionally stirring. You want to be careful that if you're doing this, you're not banging against the side of the glass, right? With this much heat, you just don't want to risk any cracking. But I'm just occasionally stirring through to distribute and get an accurate reading. That one is at 173, 168. So probably about 10 more minutes. Okay, we're at 1 hour. I just double checked my temperature with both my gun and then as well as with a probe. And we are over 181 degrees. Not too far over, but over. So now what I've done is I've turned the burner off. I'm going to very carefully move this off of the burner. I do not want to touch the jars or bring them out of the pan yet. I just want to remove them from the heat. And I'm going to let them sit for a little while because now I need them to come back down to around what I say 112 to 118. Usually around 115 degrees Fahrenheit is when I then start adding in my culture, my yogurt. So I will start timing this now so you can understand how long it takes to come back down. Okay, it's been 1 hour. At around 130 degrees, I took them out of the copper pot, out of the water, and just put them on a towel here on the counter. We're gonna add in our starter culture. I also turned my oven light on. The oven is not on, but the light is. It just kind of helps create that warmth and that warm environment to allow the culturing to happen. So because I'm doing this per quart, right, I've got my milk separated by the quarts. I'm gonna do about a 1/4 cup per quart. I'm basically just spooning the yogurt in. And mixing it around, stirring it up. I'm actually going to put the lid on and shake it really well too. And into the oven these go. And again, I'll set the timer so I can let you know how long it's gonna take. By the way, it took about an hour, another hour for that to cool back down to around the 112 to 118 degrees. This is gonna take a few hours, but I will check it. Now, how I know is when I take a jar and I kind of flip it and you see that it's not all liquidy, it's actually kind of gelled together like yogurt. That's how you'll know it's done culturing. The longer it sits, the more tart it becomes, but the flavor can still be delicious. It just depends on how you like it. But I'll come back when this is all done. So the yogurt's done. It's the next day. They cultured for about 9 to 9.5 hours. And so before I went to bed last night, I checked them, and right, how you check is when you tip it, it should be still very liquidy, but if I tip it now, I don't know if you can see. I'm gonna open this so you can see better, but there's this whey, which is what you're seeing, the liquid, but then there is like this solid gelatinous kind of mass, which is the yogurt. So when I had tipped it, it really wasn't ready yet. I shook it to really help distribute those cultures again, and then went to bed. And I couldn't sleep last night. Well, I fell asleep, but then at like 1 o'clock in the morning, I woke up. I just couldn't fall back asleep. And I thought, you know, I'm gonna check my yogurt. So I did. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, it was done. So that was about 9.5, maybe 10 hours. And so I just took it out of the oven, turned the oven light off, and threw it in the fridge, and eventually fell back asleep and went back to bed. So I have everything ready here. Now I wanna show you what they look like. This is the one I had done a few days ago, and these are the ones we did together yesterday. So because I use raw cream top milk, right, the cream does kind of rise, and you can take a spoon and kind of move that cream away. And you'll get all of that, well, here it's more visible right here. You see all that liquid, that's all the whey. And so what I like to do is kind of go pour that whey out. I could just mix it in, but if you prefer a much more thicker kind of Greek style yogurt, you're gonna wanna get rid of much of that whey as possible. And the easiest way to do that is to really just dump all of this out in a cheesecloth lined colander and let it kind of set, and all of that whey will come out, and you'll get a much thicker style yogurt. I don't always do that. I can actually see all the liquid here too. See all that? But what I am going to do is kind of just dump this little bit out. I don't mind, and my family doesn't mind it being not as thick. So I dumped off some of the whey. It's beautiful. So beautiful. I'm actually going to have some. So good. Oh my goodness, so good. I hope this was helpful. Like I said, I know a lot of people make their yogurt successfully in the Instapot, or maybe even you have a yogurt maker at home. I find this has been the most reliable method for me, making sure that I'm getting to that 181 degrees, get to that temperature, and then making sure that I'm getting to the correct temperature to help the culturing process go. Start it in the morning, do your thing, and by the evening, you'll have a perfectly cultured yogurt that you can stick in the fridge and have for breakfast the next day. Thanks for joining me today. Stay healthy, stay well. Bye-bye.